It's 2026. Welcome to the Paddock Pass podcast, our latest episode and the first one of the year. My name is Adam Wheeler, and I would like to say it's utter pleasure to be seeing the faces of Neil Morrison and David Emmett again, but there is that nagging feeling that it really is all about to start once more. I'm only kidding. Guys, it's lovely to see you. Happy New Year. Happy belated New Year to you both. Dave, what's going on? Because I can hear some sort of bizarre trumping in the background. I hope you're not hungry.
No, that's not me for a change. That's actually the next door neighbours. We've got new neighbours, and they have the builders in doing all sorts of renovation work, and so they're drilling holes and stuff. It's not as bad as it was. I think last week what they were doing was chipping off the old tiles from the kitchen, which if you've ever had to do that or ever heard someone do an entire kitchen or bathroom, it will drive you absolutely bonkers.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how depressed are you at the moment? Because we've seen that the Netherlands has had a white coating, so I'm sure you haven't been riding your motorcycle for some time.
I haven't been riding my motorcycle for a long time. However, what has made up for it is walking, because we live very close to to like a national park and next to the woods. So basically, we've been walking in the woods for an hour and a half every day, and it's been absolutely magical. It's genuinely been stunningly beautiful. And the other great thing is you walk through the woods and you can see the tracks where all the wild animals are there. So you can see where the wild boar have been. You can see where the deer have been. Where I spotted that we actually have a beech marten, which is like a little bit of a weasel style animal, which runs through our back garden. So no, it's been very exciting, and I've really enjoyed the break, and I'm up for it.
It's a shame you're a vegetarian, Dave. Otherwise, it sounds like it could have been quite a feast in the Emmett household.
That's right. Yes, that would have been straight in there with a magic potion, slinging the slaughtered boar over the arm, and then having a good old roast in the back garden.
Neil, my key question for you, Marc Marquez won 11 Grand Prix in 2025. Did you reach that amount of Guinnesses sort of ingested over the holiday period, or was it significantly less or much more?
I would say probably, maybe double that number. Which is, there were quite a few. Well, there were quite a few Guinness sessions, like there has to be when you're back in Ireland. I think it goes without saying. But great to see you guys. Happy New Year. Having spent a crazy amount of time, seen probably more of you than most of my family members, maybe even my partner that I live with in 2025. It is quite strange going a full 3 weeks without having you in my life. I must say it's a welcome return.
We're dipping into a predictions pod because it's ridiculously early in the MotoGP year, as we know. Dave, I'm sure you're looking forward to the Sepang test already. There have been one or two little pieces of news. If you've been if sort of viewers and listeners have been keeping an eye on riders' social media activity, then they're kind of engaging in other riding pursuits, such as motocross, Fabio Quartararo in particular, on the dirt quite a lot. There have been some injuries. One major significant one for Fermin Aldeguer, after an impressive rookie season in 2025. But there's also been a slight tweak to the rules, Dave. Riders now have to, I think, revert to the service road if they want to restart during a race. Is it me, or does that sound a little impractical? Because there's not always the easiest way to access the service road.
No, that's right. But that's very much the point. The point was that they were riders, especially you saw a lot in Moto3 that riders were basically trying to bump start the bike at the side of the track, at the edge of the track. And you're normally, when you crash, you're normally going off outside. And so trying to start your bike on that part of the track in the same place is actually really quite dangerous because that's where people are coming through at speed and are likely to crash. So I think it's a good safety move. Basically, you do have, if the bike cuts out, if it stops running, you have to take the bike behind the barriers to actually restart it, try to repair it, whatever. That also gives the marshals a chance to get a bit of a look at the bike and see whether it's actually safe to continue. You could say it might have been a bit different. For example, Mark in Austin last year, I think, where he crashed and he had one of his foot pegs hanging off. Maybe if he'd been forced to push the bike behind the barrier and onto the service road, the marshals would have said, "You know what? No, you're not carrying on." So, I think it's a small change, but I think it's a big improvement in terms of safety. And it is, unfortunate. But the thing is also it will discourage people from remounting because they're going to lose so much time if they lose their if they have to try to restart, if they have to push the bike behind the barriers, it's another 10, 15 seconds. If in a race, it becomes almost pointless trying to rejoin.
Just a quick clarification on that, because does the bike have to have stalled? Because
Yes.
You've seen Marquez numerous times, obviously crash, partially save, and then restart quite quickly. If he's sort of forbidden from doing that, then that could also sort of change what we see in MotoGP.
Yeah, no, I mean, if the bike cuts out, then you have to push it behind the barriers. If you crash and the bike is still running, I mean, what you're going to see is a lot of riders with finger injuries as they desperately hold onto the clutch as they slide through the gravel. But actually, probably what you'll see someone be very, very clever with the engineers being very, very clever and finding a way to make sure the bike doesn't cut out in the race when it's running. Yeah, I mean, if the bike is running, then it's fine. You can get back on, remount, and rejoin. If the bike cuts out, then you have to take it behind the barrier and restart there. Try to restart there.
It sounds like another way that Gigi Dell'Igna is going to come up with some device, Dave. Some new way that you can vilify him. Maybe some, I don't know, tweaks to the levers.
This is the sort of thing that I'm perfectly fine with. I actually think it is quite good because I do remember. So when Honda first had the seamless gearbox in 2011, that infamous incident where Valentino Rossi took out Casey Stoner in the first corner at Jerez, and Casey couldn't get the bike restarted because the seamless gearbox stopped it from being bump started, and so they had to invent something to make that possible again. They had to actually make a change to the gearbox to make it possible to bump start the bike. So yeah, these are the sort of things what we call edge cases, where it's something that someone hasn't thought about and then it happens and you go, oh yeah, no, we really ought to do something about that.
Well, listen, let's get into our predictions. We've got some wacky kind of forecasts coming up for 2026. We've got 8 categories to get through in this podcast. We're going to start off with you, Neil. Firstly, a thing that we expect to see in MotoGP this year. What springs to mind?
Well, I was thinking about this. I mean, this podcast last year, I'm pretty sure that none of us predicted that Pecco Bagnaia would have like a total meltdown. Jorge Martin would have a presence at 5 rounds of the 22 that we eventually visited. That Honda would have a kind of mini resurgence and have 2 dry podiums. I think these were all quite left field things that ended up happening that few of us predicted. So I think it's really quite difficult at this stage, before we've had any like really proper testing, to understand which way the land lies. I think there's a couple of things which are pretty sure we can predict with some certainty. Like, I'm pretty sure by the end of the season, Marc is still going to be the number 1 rider in MotoGP. I'm fairly confident that Aprilia could still be the closest manufacturer to Ducati throughout this season. But if we're talking about some things that we expect to see that maybe are a little bit less well trodden or predictable, then I think we're going to see Honda winning a dry race, for example. I think that is something that is definitely within the realms of possibility. I'd love to say we'll see Jorge Lorenzo back in the MotoGP podium, invited up by race winner Maverick Vinales, his new buddy and training partner, just for a bit of flashback to 2016, 2017 vibes. And maybe we're going to see David Emmett make his debut in Australia this year. I don't know. He's been putting it off for about 10 years now. And I'm really, really hopeful that 2026 could be the year.
I understand that Australia is on fire at the moment, so I'm not sure it's safe.
Yeah, well done, Neil. I mean, we've really started the podcast on a fiery note. I mean, you've predicted that Mark's going to be champion, that Aprilia is going to be the second best manufacturer. Keep listening, people, because there are slightly more engrossing predictions coming up. I'm going to go next.
Jorge
I'll
Lorenzo
say
back in the MotoGP podium wasn't engrossing enough for you?
And maybe Jorge Lorenzo back on the MotoGP podium with Maverick Vinales, and Valentino Rossi back on the podium with Pecco Bagnaia. Maybe Danny Pedrosa back up there as well with Acosta. Just for the Magic Trio. It would be funny if nothing else.
Do we think that Jorge Lorenzo would share the top step with Maverick? It'd be like a brothers in arms.
I think you would elbow him off it.
Exactly.
You would take the bottle of champagne and start spraying.
Exactly.
I'm going to say, I think in 2026, we're going to see more parity. I mean, did we have, 7 different winners in 2025? I have a sneaky suspicion that there's going to be even more next year, and it's not going to be Marquez GP again. I don't know. I think we're going to see even more progression from Aprilia, and I think we'll see big steps also from KTM, and then the Japanese are kind of making their way steadily. I think the dry weather win for Honda is a great shout, Neil. But I just think we're going to see, a couple of other. I mean, you could say Firmino Daguerre and Raul Fernandez getting victories last year was surprising in itself. But I just think there'll be a few more sort of candidates, a few kind of closer battles. It's not just going to be a Marquez fest. So that's my call for this year. What about you, Dave?
Well, first of all, you're wrong. It is going to be a Marquez fest. Secondly, I mean, more parity is really, really good. I really think that you're really starting to see the concession system start to work. I think we're also going to see, I think it's going to be a really interesting year. One of the reasons it's going to be difficult to predict things is because it's going to be really mixed up. As some factories concentrate on 2026, they still need things. They still have objectives. Some have basically given up on 2026 and will be looking towards 2027. For example, what do Aprilia do? Aprilia are really, really close to matching Ducati. So do they put a lot of effort into 2026, or do they pour more of that effort into 2027 in the hope of actually challenging them in 2027? Yamaha, basically 2026 is lost. It's going to be building for 2027 as they work on the V4. Honda really, really need to attract a top rider, a really top rider. So do they focus on their 2026 bike? They need a win in the 2026. They need to prove that they can win in 2026 so that they can say to Pedro Acosta, Jorge Martin, Fabio Quartararo, whoever, lads, here it is. Oh, and also here's a big stack of money. Come and give it a go.
So, to summarize, what do you expect to see in 2026?
What I expect to see is, this is a really bad prediction, because what I expect to see is that it's going to be really difficult to predict as people really some factories will start to focus on 2026. Some will focus on 2027, and it's going to be really difficult to tell who's going to do what.
So to summarize, what do you? No, I'm only kidding. So I mean, I think also, Dave, it might be slightly depressing for you because as an obsessed fan of testing, it could be pretty dull for 2026 machinery. I reckon we'll probably get to maybe the Jerez test or the first one-day IRTA test of the season. That will be the last kind of occasions that teams will be making significant rejigs or configuration changes to their current race setups, right? Because they're not going to be expanding too much on resources and other kind of allocations to get shit done for this year.
I mean, my understanding is there's going to be 3 tests in the coming year, which will be Jerez, Barcelona, and Austria. At the moment, Austria is the first Pirelli test, and that'll be really interesting because that'll be where everyone rolls out their 850s and where we get to see it for the first public, the first time in the public. Now, I understand that Pirelli are really keen to have the Barcelona test also be an 850 test, 2027 test. So honestly, Jerez is going to be interesting, but yeah, you're right. I mean, the Jerez test for the first time, will be one of the least interesting tests, and the other tests are going to be really, really interesting. I am really, genuinely, really looking forward to seeing the 850s on track to see how they behave. Especially, I think I'd be spending perhaps more time trackside than in pit lane for a chance, because the way that you ride the bike is going to change so much. That is going to be the really big difference.
That's assuming you get access to the service road. Let's see what kind of criteria the media passes have for 2026. Category 2, it's probably a little bit of a dull one, and there's going to be a consensus here, but let's name it anyway. Neil, who's going to win the most races this year?
I did take a leaf from your book ad, and I did a massive eye roll when you rolled out these categories earlier, and I looked at this category because it was, it's quite self-explanatory. Do we really need to even discuss this in any great detail? I mean, I think it is going to be Mark. There were a few doubts, I think, at the end of last year. I saw one or two comments from certain people about his condition, at the awards festival at Valencia, where he wasn't able to lift the trophy above his head. But it does seem as though he's got back into into training in a big way. In January, I've seen photos of him flat tracking and doing different types of exercise. So, you do assume that physically he's going to be A-okay by the time we get to Sepang at the start of next month. And yeah, I don't think I'm alone in saying that I think Mark will be the most winning rider in 2026.
Will he win 11 races again? Will he win, was it 7 in a row? That was that hot streak during the center of the season. Well, the central section of the season where he managed to pretty much coat the championship. What do you think, Dave?
I think he will. I mean, I don't think he'll win 7 in a row because things have to fall into place for that to happen. I do think that he will win, again, 10, 11, 12 races. He will win the race. He's obviously going to be the champion, because there's, the only riders who could possibly challenge him are not on bikes, unless KTM make a massive step forward. They're not on bikes which are capable of actually taking on the Ducati. So, I expect him to win. I expect him to win a lot. He's been riding on track again. He's been riding a Ducati Panigale around the Aspar circuit near Valencia. So, I don't see anyone to challenge him this year. The only thing that can stop him is what happened this year, is an injury. Last year. Yes, indeed. Well, I can't remember what day it is, let alone what year it is. But he genuinely, the only thing that can stop him is injury. You have to wonder what happens if he has another injury, because he is starting to use up his body.
I think last year you could say a lot of things fell into place for Mark. Obviously, first time him being in the factory Ducati team. As we said previously, few could have predicted Pecco's drop-off being so significant. And frankly speaking, the other people capable of fighting with Mark over a season just weren't on the machinery or in a kind of position to do it, because, Marco Bezzecchi was moving across from a new manufacturer into a new team. Jorge Martin had his serious injury issues. KTM at the start of last year were going through all sorts of monetary dramas, which really upset the start of their season. And Pedro Acosta, kind of seemed to put him off and distract him somewhat. Yamaha struggles with Fabio Quartararo. And I think this year, with Bezzecchi being settled with, you do hope that KTM can do something. You hope that Acosta can at least start the season kind of where he ended last year. You do hope that there will be a bit more in terms of riders able to stick it to Mark week on, week out. But yeah, still expecting them to win at least 10 races this year.
Yeah, I would agree. But I think the most prolific rider aside from Marquez in the last 3 years has been Bagnaia. So if Ducati Corsa can sort out this rear ride height device issue, or whatever it was that, cursed his 2025 season, then, there's no reason why Bagnaia can't sort of be the competitive force that he was, in recent years. If that's the case, I expect him to be winning more Grand Prix. Maybe we'll eat into his teammates' tally, Dave.
I think that you have sort of half of a point, which I sort of agree with, which is
thank you.
Well, I thought, I'll do something for a change. But the biggest shock for Pecco Bagnaia was Marcus coming in, because Pecco has always been the number one rider throughout his time in Ducati. Even at Pramac, he was the coming talent. He was being groomed for a role in the factory team. That has changed. All of a sudden, he's no longer what everything sort of revolves around. That requires a reset sort of mentally, and I think a break can help that. And I think he might sort of like come back. If he can come back and be more combative and try to win his place back, then I think he can sort of take the fight to Mark a bit more. But the trouble is, he's just not as good as Mark.
But if there's a situation where Ducati are negotiating with another rider to take his seat, could we not foresee that relationship deteriorating even further earlier into the season?
Yes, but it's also nothing motivates like needing to find another seat. So, we all know there's the old contract season thing where all of a sudden these riders get really, really good just before the summer break when all the contracts are signed. So I can see that happening as well.
What if it goes the other way? What if Ducati wrap up Bagnaia for another 2 to 3 years? I mean, that also establishes him as arguably the future of Ducati Corsa and their factory.
Why would they do that? I mean, they're
not paying attention last year.
Yeah, exactly. Fabio Quartararo's on the market. Pedro Acosta is on the market. Jorge Martinez.
Maybe it's something to do with 2 world championships in 3 years. Something to do with that.
What have you done for me lately?
Let's not get ahead of ourselves, guys, because category 3, we're going to have this is one kind of thing that's going to dominate MotoGP certainly for the first months of the season, and that's going to be the factory lineups for 2027. So I've had a little pick just for the factory teams. I mean, the satellite teams is a whole other area, but probably a different podcast by itself. But just for the factory kind of lineups for next year, I've had a sort of a little forecast, and I want you to tell me what you think. I think the factory Ducati team is going to be Bagnaia and Quartararo. In Aprilia, I think, easy, Dave, easy. I think the Aprilia lineup's going to stay pretty much the same as it is.
Yes.
Bezzecchi and Jorge Martin. KTM, I'm going to plump for Brad Binder and David Alonso. And Yamaha, I think they're going to get the checkbook out to replace Quartararo by signing Pedro Acosta and maybe drafting in someone like Joan Mir alongside him. And then Honda will be the Moto2 world champion, Diogo Moreira, as well as Luca Marini for a bit of continuity. No to all?
No.
Yeah.
You're right about
Marquez
Aprilia.
retired, sorry.
Well, I mean, where to start? So Marquez is going to retire. I'm going to have to disagree with that. I mean, he did go on record a couple of times last year and say he foresees him competing in MotoGP for at least another 3 years. I mean, injury permitting, and he obviously had a pretty serious injury at the end of last year. And Dave is absolutely right. If there's another injury, there might be a situation where he does really ask himself, right, I've done this wonderful comeback. What more is there to achieve with this continual risk of, my body at stake? But I don't foresee that happening. Do you really think Honda are going to keep Luca Marini in there? What else did you say? Yamaha, you had Acosta going to Yamaha? I think that would be quite unlikely. I'm assuming that Pedro can maybe aim a little bit higher than that. And Brad Binder to stay at KTM. I mean, Binder does need to do something pretty significant to merit that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the only way that Marquez retires is through injury. He will keep on racing until, either through injury or through being really bad, and he's still several years off from being really bad. He's not going to. There's nothing that he loves winning, and there is no marker. There is no points. There is no so there's no record that he wants to achieve after which he can retire. His optimal number of world championships is his current total plus 1, and his optimal number of wins is, this current number of wins plus 1. He always wants more. There has never been a rider as ambitious as this. And so he's going to keep going until he can't, either physically or because he can't compete anymore. Pedro Acosta to Yamaha, but Pedro Acosta wants to win. He tried to leave KTM to ride a VR46 Ducati. I think Pedro Acosta will actually jump across to, he'd jump on anything which he can win on. He really wants to win. He wants a championship rather than anything. We know that Honda have got a big, really. I had a few conversations in Valencia last year, and some of the managers were saying Honda have basically got a really big fat checkbook, and they're waving it around at anyone who'll take it. So I don't think it's going to be that. And Marini is great, and I think they will sack Marini, or they won't sack Marini. They'll move him down to take the place of Johan Zarco.
Who has a contract for 2027?
Miguel Oliveira had a contract for 2026, and look where that got him. It got him a BMW ride in World Superbikes. Contracts are, they're useful, but they're not. It's not a guarantee. That I think there's going to be a lot of changes. I think Bagnaia is out of Ducati, because I think it's going to be either Quartararo or Acosta on there, and then what's really interesting is what you do with Bagnaia, because I think it would be great on a Yamaha. I think it'd be great for Aprilia, even maybe KTM. So yeah, there's lots and lots of things which are going to happen, and I think we're going to see more likely to see Acosta on a Honda than on a Yamaha.
Shall I give you my list that I've drawn up? Okay, so my Ducati team for 2027 is maybe Marc and Quartararo. Aprilia, I can see Bez staying, and I think Bagnaia could maybe go in and replace Jorge Martin. I mean, the thing is that Martin is, if he's going to stay at Aprilia, he's going to have to take a significant wage reduction. And I don't think that a guy that's won a MotoGP World Championship will really be up for doing that when there's a possibility of earning more money at a factory elsewhere. I could see Martin maybe taking a bit of a strop at that.
Neil, just on that subject, do you reckon he's got a really short window to maybe prove himself at Aprilia after everything that's happened? I don't think the contract dispute, but also the crashes in Sepang last year. I mean, he maybe has half a dozen races to really sort of stamp his case for a renewal.
Yeah, exactly. And I still think there's a big question mark as to whether he would actually want to stay as well, just because of everything that happened last year. And when we saw him come back, okay, he was still far from fully fit in Valencia, but we've still not really seen him, aside from I think the weekend in Brno and then in Hungary. We've not really seen him properly click with the RSGP yet, and we're 1 year into his sort of his time there. So yeah, I think Martin leaves Aprilia. I think he maybe ends up at Yamaha, and I'm going on Martin and Bastianini as the factory Yamaha squad in 27. Honda, Acosta, and David Alonso. And then I'm going with KTM promoting Maverick from Tech 3 and putting Danny Holgado next to him.
That's a good shout. I like that. I mean,
isn't it a bit adventurous for Honda to go with, maybe not. I mean, two very young riders.
You signed one proven, well, he's not a proven winner in MotoGP, is he? But one rider that you think can be a proper winner of MotoGP, and a guy that can fight for the championship, and then the rider that in 1 year down the line is going to be doing the same.
Exactly. You're signing the new Marc Marquez and the new Marc Marquez with Acosta and Alonso. It would actually be great, because there would certainly be a certain amount of. They would soon really start to irritate each other, because they're both very, very good. You'd sort of start to get sort of like Rossi and Lorenzo vibes there, I think, which would be really good fun. I'll give you my lineup: Ducati, Marc, and Quartararo.
I love how both of you think that Ducati is swimming in millions to be able to re-up.
The deal is: do you want to be a champion? Yes, you could come and ride our bike. That's the deal. That is the Ducati deal. And
polish your crystal ball for the 850s, Dave. Ducati can end up going from the front to the back of the grid for all we know on Pirellis. I mean, it's unlikely considering their superbike exploits.
Yeah, but I mean, you could say the same for any factory. So if you're looking at, what's going to happen, the only data that you have is A, who's good on the Pirellis in World Superbikes, and B, what's the current state? Who have proven that they can win, that they can build a winning bike, that they can exploit the rules. Ducati is a very safe bet. I do think, Quartararo's made loads of money. He will give away that money for the chance to win. Acosta would as well. but I think Acosta has the chance to win on a Honda, and I think he's also young enough. He's younger than, what is he, 5-6 years younger than Quartararo, so he still has plenty of opportunities. Bezzecchi, Aprilia. I mean, like, Bezzecchi and Martini is really, really interesting. I think it's going to start. I agree with Ad. I think it's going to be unchanged because they're both very good. They suit the bike, and it'll give them stability going into the 850s.
Well, one of them suits the bike.
Well, the other one, I think the other one will suit the bike once he stops falling off and hurting himself. So let's see. I mean, I thought that actually Jorge Martin did quite well on the Aprilia last year when he wasn't injured. He was learning quite quickly. It's just that he needs to stop hurting himself. Honda, I agree with you, Neil. Alonso and Acosta for exactly the same reason. Acosta wants to win, and he'd be happy to take a big stack of money, and Alonso is the future. Yamaha, I think, is the most interesting because they are not going to be able to attract people with performance because they are working on their V4. So what they need is someone who can help develop the bike and who are looking for money. I think I think they will take Joan Mir because Mir's going to lose his ride at Honda, and I think they might move Jack Miller up because Jack Miller has been so pivotal in the development of the Yamaha up until now. He's brought a lot of the experience from previous manufacturers, which has really helped them move things along. And he has a really good understanding. KTM, I think it's really the most difficult. I definitely think Vinales gets moved up, but I have no idea. I'd written Binder, but I actually really like Neil's suggestion of Danny Holgado. If I am KTM, that's definitely something that I think I'd be thinking about.
I'd like to draw a line under this category with the caveat, judging by our Alpine Stars Paddock Pass podcast Fantasy League positions, we know absolutely nothing. So don't.
And this is definitely going to be a piece of audio that will be chopped up and relayed to us with great delight and smugness by a host of listeners. I'm pretty sure throughout this crazy silly season that is likely to unfold in the coming months. So yeah, I'm kind of already regretting things that I've said in the last 10 minutes.
Well, sorry for you, Neil. You were the 2025 champion. I mean, you're closer to sort of sane predictions than any of us. So there we go. I'm just baking my humble pie quite nicely in the oven at the moment. It's going to take a while to come to sort of full fruition, but it's in the process. Well, let's move on. Next category: which Grand Prix are going to be the most memorable in 2026?
That's a really difficult question because you don't really know until afterwards, because races sort of turn out in different ways. For example, I think last year it was Le Mans. Le Mans was clearly the most memorable, possibly even Silverstone, just because of what happened to Fabio Quartararo and all the other stuff that went on. So you just have these really weird things happen. You never know which race is going to be weirdest. I mean, the safe bet is always Phillip Island because it's a great track and the racing is usually great. But I mean, at some point, chaos. The chaos demons will break into the MotoGP paddock and upset the apple cart, and we don't know, which GP they're planning to invade right now.
We had 22 Grand Prix last year, the longest season on record, and almost 10 of those broke attendance figures. Like you said, Dave, I mean, we had Le Mans thanks to, Johann Zarco's emotional victory, but also the fact that Le Mans is just packed. It's sold out year upon year. So, if you want a kind of a very authentic European MotoGP experience, then that's obviously one Grand Prix to maybe consider, but good luck trying to find any accommodation already. Other than that, I'm going to say Brazil, back on the calendar for the first time in 20 years, 21 years? When was the last Brazilian GP? 2003?
4.
No, was it 4?
Yeah, Tomato one on Bridgestones. Yeah.
2 decades since MotoGP's been in that particular part of the world. Is it the Ayrton Senna circuit in Guania? I can't remember the name of the facility, but assuming that they can get everything ready on time, it's got a little bit of GP history from those remembering the late 80s and the famous tire cooking exploits of various 500cc riders like Mick Doohan and Randy Mamola there. I think, judging on the motocross Grand Prix that I've been to in Brazil, the fans are absolutely bananas. And I think there's going to be a hell of an atmosphere, a big attendance. Assuming everything goes okay and the circuit is not kind of like a hungry Mark II, then I think we'll be doing pretty good. Any shouts from you, Neil?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it won't be Aragon. Aragon always seems to be the most underwhelming Grand Prix of the year, apart from a certain someone on this podcast. I did just say that to get under your skin, Dave. Sorry, that was cruel. But yeah, I mean, Dave, I think is right. You're never really sure before the season starts. I mean, you always can bank on a couple of the old favourites to throw up some excitement, the likes of Jerez or Mugello, Phillip Island, Brazil, maybe for the wrong reasons, because there have been some reports over the Christmas period from Brazilian media that the track is a little bit behind for being ready for the Grand Prix in March. But fingers crossed that goes ahead and everything's okay. And I think maybe if you're looking at the last couple of years, Indonesia is maybe going to be the most memorable, because Indonesia always seems to be one of the most memorable rounds of the year, just because it is so unique in its location, the sort of the heat that we have there, and weird stuff tends to happen in Indonesia, as last year proved. So I think our trip to Mandalika in September, I think it is. October, sorry, then I believe
because Zara, my lovely writer who does MotoGP reports for me, sent me a link to the World's Tiramisu Championships, which are on the same weekend as Mandalika. So
you'll be missing Mandalika then. Yeah. Well, just be me and you going solo that weekend, Ed.
Yeah, absolutely. We might get Dave on video with like mascarpone smeared across his mouth at some point, but yes. Right, next, I want to know from you both, who are going to be the top riders per brand? I'm excluding Ducati from this because it's fairly bloody obvious. So I want to know, firstly from you, Dave, who's going to be the top Aprilia rider? And perhaps just add a little bit of a twist. It doesn't have to be solely on results, maybe on impact.
No, I think it's going to be. You can't look past Bezzecchi. Bezzecchi was really just solid. He grew so much as a rider. He was so improved as a rider overall, as a human as well. As he matured a lot. I know you don't agree, Ad, but that's okay. But he did mature a lot, and I think he is going to grow into a leadership role inside. I think he is already the leader inside the Aprilia garage, and he has a year of experience under his belt. And I think he's going to throw up a real. I mean, insofar as you can actually challenge Marc Marquez, I think he's going to be the rider to really take the fight to him.
Thoughts, Neil?
I think Bezzecchi is the number one at Aprilia currently. I think there's still big question marks with regards to Martin on that package, and he needs a kind of flawless preseason, I think, to come into the season with some momentum. And then there's obviously going to be that uncertainty about what's he going to do for 2027. I don't think Bezzecchi will quite have that question mark hanging over him in the early races of the year. Ralph Fernandez, I don't think is at the level to be pushing consistently. I think there's going to be rounds where we'll see Fernandez up there fighting, maybe toward the front like we did at the end of last year. Bezzecchi for Aprilia for me. Looking at KTM, I mean, I think it's fairly self-explanatory. Pedro Acosta, I think, should be the number one guy there. Although obviously you do have Enea Bastianini working with the new crew chief in Andres Madrid, who was previously with Brad Binder, now working with Phil Marin, previously with Toprak Razgatlioglu in World Superbike. So both Binder and Bastianini will be going through, some pretty big changes in kind of working methods. And then, of course, we've got Vinales coming back, and Vinales did give Acosta a good run. In fact, it was, the top KTM guy, largely speaking, before he got injured last year. But yeah, I really think that Pedro will be the top guy at KTM. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to see what Maverick Vinales can do with a year. As long as he doesn't injure his shoulder again, because he was just very impressive at the beginning of last year, and he really pushed Pedro Acosta into. Because my overwhelming memory of the first half of last year was Pedro Acosta insisting that he was the best KTM rider, and having to insist that he was the best KTM rider because everyone was talking about Maverick Vinales.
I can't believe neither of you have mentioned the Lorenzo effect yet. But that's also got to be a factor, I guess. Could Maverick's championship credentials suddenly surge because of external influences? The other thing just about Acosta is what happens if he announces very early he's leaving KTM? I mean, that the KTM sort of pot in terms of chemistry is known to be a bit volatile in the past when it's come to riders that are sort of making plans to get away or fallen out of favor. I don't think that would harm Acosta's competitiveness at all, but then also, and he's lucky in the fact that it's the final year of this particular technical formula. So any kind of motorcycle for the following year is not really going to have any bearing on his current season. But I think we have to be a little bit careful in sort of saying that Maverick's going to be miles off Acosta. I think, that it might be closer than people think.
I think another really interesting thing, which you talking about that has suddenly made me realize, is that if there's going to be a lot of riders leaving and swapping factories, which I think most of us think is going to happen, who's going to test the 850s? Because if Acosta sort of announces really early that he's leaving, or Quartararo announces really early that he's leaving, they're not going to be testing the 850s on Pirellis because they won't be allowed to. They won't be. They won't be allowed to take that knowledge of what the bike is like, where the bike is in its development cycle, all the rest of it, to another manufacturer. So that, I think, is going to strengthen Acosta's position with regards to Maverick, because if Acosta has decided to leave, he's not going to be on that 850. He's going to be, he's basically going to be cutting laps on the 1,000, working on that, focusing on that, because that's all he's got to do this year. He's not going to have any work developing the 850. So yeah, I think his focus is going to be on this year rather than next year, which makes it really quite interesting. Again, this is why I said you don't know what's going to happen.
Just to step back a moment, I think 2026 is going to be the most fascinating year of Jorge Martin's career, and I'm really keen and kind of interested to see what he does, and, how he deals with it and his next moves. Neil, who's your kind of pick for top Yamaha and Honda riders in 2026?
Well, Yamaha, if we're looking at results, easy. Fabio Quartararo, without question. But I mean, I think probably you were saying not just results based. I think there is going to be a greater interest on Toprak Razgatlioglu. We haven't really spoken about him yet so far, and I think he is one of the big stories coming into this season without question. Speaking to just some friends over the Christmas break that are massive MotoGP fans, I mean, that was the first thing that they were talking about. It wasn't like, is Mark going to win another 10 races in 2026? It was like, how's Toprak going to do? And that seems to be the thing that's capturing a lot of the kind of the public's imagination with good reason. I mean, one of the great World Superbike riders of all time coming across to cut his teeth in his prime as well, it needs to be said. I mean, it's not like Toprak is kind of nearing the end of his career. Certainly hope not anyway. He's coming off two of his best ever seasons in World Superbike. And it is a very interesting sort of proposition that he has. I mean, if Toprak was jumping on a Ducati, I'm pretty sure that he would be, fighting for top sixes fairly quickly into his MotoGP career. I think he is that good, but being on a bike that is, as Dave said previously, under development, and will be pretty much under development throughout this year, I think it's going to be very interesting to see, firstly, how he does and how he reacts to the situation, because this is a guy that is just used to winning constantly. And when he's not, and when things are not really going his way, there is a sense of impatience, I think, that kind of engulfs him, and certainly comes from Kenan Sofuoglu. I mean, Sofuoglu managed, just 2 years in Moto2 before he was like, you know what, I'm giving up on this and going back to somewhere where I know I can win. I'm pretty sure the Toprak is going to, not do that. But it will be interesting to see just how he reacts to maybe a couple of bad weekends where he's outside the top 10, which I think is probably more than likely going to happen in the first couple of races of 2026.
What about Honda now?
Joan Mir, I think, is probably the one that. He wasn't the top Honda rider in the championship. I think he was only third.
He was third behind Marini, behind Zarco and Marini.
Exactly. But he was the rider that I think was the fastest at the end of the year. And we are speaking about a rider that is, I guess, riding for his future. None of us really expect him to be at Honda beyond 2026. Could this be Mir's swan song? I mean, there's some people that think that he might just walk away from the sport at the end of this season. But I do think that, the last 3 months of last year, he was riding somewhere close to his best again. And that was, at the time, good enough for a third position in a couple of races. And I think, Honda should take a step forward over the off-season. And I'm expecting him to maybe win a race or two this year.
Any shouts from you, Dave?
Yamaha, obviously it's going to be Fabio Quartararo, but it's an excellent point about Toprak. This really is going to be, it's just going to be a really strange year for Toprak because he's got to change, he's got to adapt to MotoGP, he's got to adapt to the Michelins, and then, we lose them. So much is changing. He's got to learn lots of new tracks as well, tracks that he's not been to. So it really is going to be quite a strange season for him. But I do think he's going to, he's going to make an impact just because of his personality. He is what MotoGP needs, and I think
love those stoppies.
Yeah, exactly. Get used to the stoppies. In terms of Honda, I think that Luca Marini is going to end up as top Honda, mostly because I think Mir is going to outperform him. I don't think Marini will win many races. I think he might get a podium. I think Mir has a really good shot at winning one, maybe two races. But Mir falls
also
off.
out crash him.
Exactly. Joan Mir is going to crash, and he's going to lose too many points on his bad weekends where Marini is just so consistent and so solid. And I think Marini only ended up like about 3 or 4 points behind Zarco in the end, and about 40 points ahead of Mir. So I would put money on Marini over Mir. Who's going to make the biggest impact? I think in terms of impact, I'm really looking forward to see what Diogo Moreira can do, because he is getting onto a really good bike, a bike that is really developing, and he's going to have time and space to develop and to progress. So I think we could see a bit of an Agura thing, but then later in the season rather right at the beginning.
You've both kind of touched on it, but I want to hear your call for best rookie of 2026. Do we pick sort of the World Superbike champion, or do we pick the Moto2 World champion? I'm more inclined towards the Brazilian. I think just because of GP paddock awareness, I don't know how you can measure that, but it just feels that maybe Moreira's familiarity with things. I mean, I know he's also moving on to Michelin's and making a hefty step up. I don't know. I just think from what we've seen so far and the rate that he's progressed, how young he still is, Moreira's going to come out with more points in 2026.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that. I don't think he's a better rider than Toprak, but I think he'll be on a more sorted package this year. And he kind of knows the inner workings of the paddock and has been schooled in the inner workings of the MotoGP paddock since he stepped up into Grand Prix racing 5 years ago. Toprak, there's just so much to learn, and it's a new package that will have inevitable teething problems. He might be playing down his expectations, but I think internally it's going to be quite an interesting thing to see him react to, not being one of the leading contenders. Whereas I think Moreira will be a lot more accepting of being maybe 15th or 16th in a couple of the early races. Will probably be able to show what he can do by mid-season.
Yeah, I mean, Moreira, there's less pressure on him because he's a rookie coming from Moto2. He's on a much better bike, and he knows the tracks. He knows the score. So I think it is going to be easier for him. I think it's going to be much more difficult for Toprak, but I agree. I think Toprak is the better rider, but I think we have to wait for 27 to really see what Toprak is capable of.
Penultimate category. I want you both to imagine a MotoGP class without Marquez. So I want your nominations for world champion in all three divisions. Who wants to go first?
So we can't say Mark for the MotoGP championship, is what you're saying, Ed?
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to go over his. I mean,
no. Well, all right. Second in MotoGP. Who's going to be second in MotoGP, and who's going to be champion in Moto2 and Moto3?
Mark's 33 years old when the season starts. I don't know if that's going to have any bearing whatsoever. And of course, we know how battered he is. If there is any kind of doubt about Marc Marquez, it's his ability to finish a full season, injuries permitting. But yeah, if you want to say runner-up, we can do it that way, or in a Marquez-less MotoGP universe, who emerges as world champion?
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting question. Who is going to be the closest challenger to Mark? Maybe say Acosta for MotoGP, second in MotoGP behind Mark. Moto2, I think David Alonso is, I wouldn't say a shoe-in, but I think he will go into this year as the favourite. It is really a competitive Moto2 class in 2026, without question. But I think Alonso at the moment, and just considering what he did in his rookie year, is maybe the top of the bill. And then I think Moto3, you can't really look beyond Max Quiles after what he did as a rookie in 2025. I think there were just, two races, where he finished outside the top six as a rookie in the races he took part in. So yeah, I think it could be a bit of a long year for his competitors in the junior class.
Dave?
I mean, runner-up is going to be Marco Bezzecchi, I think, because I think the Aprilia is going to be the best package. In Moto2 is really, really interesting because there are so many different options. Alonso, Holgado. Do we think that Holgado could beat Alonso? I think he's certainly going to make it really, really difficult. Moto3, honestly, I don't really know, but I have to agree. Max Quiles, I think, Quiles really showed that he was, that he really does have the goods. So it's going to be hard to see who can beat him.
In Moto3, I'd say look out for Alvaro Carpe as well.
Yes.
Had a slightly up and down rookie season, but the speed is undoubtedly there. And of course, in the Red Bull KTM team, just look at what Jose Antonio Reda was able to progress to last year. Moto2, I think, is pretty tough. I mean, why can't we say Senna Agius? Barry Baltus was incredibly consistent. If he can nudge things up a little bit in 2026, then he has to be another contender. I really hope it's a similar season in Moto2 as what we had last year, because that was thoroughly entertaining all the way through. And in MotoGP, I think the closest challenger is going to be Bagnaia. I think Ducati are going to get things sorted out for him. And just based on previous pedigree, then the results are going to come back. I don't think he's quite psychologically mortally wounded, as we all like to sort of think. And I think it's going to be a bit of a renaissance for the Italian. So there's my predictions.
Your continued faith in Bagnaia really is quite...
it's quite touching, really.
It's touching, yeah. It's sweet. It's sweet.
Yeah. The results speak for themselves, I think. Obviously not last year, but before that.
Adam Pecco sitting in a tree, Kissing.
Listen, if he's if 2026 goes anything like last year, then I think Pecco would be lucky to get a ride in BSB. But I think you've got to allow him to fire back. Why not? All right, guys. Last category of this predictions podcast: what we would like to see personally this year. I'm going to go first with a couple of little small mentions. Baggers, can I say that with a straight face?
Yes.
You can, yes, but don't expect to be taken seriously ever again.
Okay. I'd also like to. I'm looking forward to the first tests of the new era. So as mentioned, I think bike development is going to slow and effectively stop once we get to the first one-day test of the year. The first sightings of the 850, the first words from people like Alessio Spargaro, those test riders, those testing programs that come into MotoGP. I think the first information that comes out is going to be really interesting to learn about. And then I'd like to see how MotoGP, on a personal note, progresses in terms of sort of media coverage and media landscape. is it going to be gaining new fans through social media, more influences as traditional kind of media outlets going to be on the way out? I mean, everything that we're being surrounded by in terms of AI and whatever else, I mean, it's a subject for a much bigger podcast, maybe not so relevant to MotoGP as ours, but I think, our peers, our co-workers in sort of MotoGP media, what's going to happen? I think the next couple of years are going to be sort of very curious to chart how people really kind of find out their insight. One thing I do predict is that Moto Matters will be there. It's a pillar of the MotoGP media and sort of informative sort of panorama. So there you go. Dave, what about you? What would you like to see personally in 2026?
I mean, what I'd like to see personally, two things. Firstly, I'd like to see KTM make a really good bike, a really competitive bike, because I want to see what Pedro Acosta is capable of, and I want to see what happens after he gets his first win, because I think once he gets his first win, there's going to be a lot more to come. I'm really quite excited about that. The thing that I'm most interested in, apart from obviously the 850s, I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to that. The other thing that I'm really interested in, I think this is going to be the first year of Liberty Media, and that you will really start to see. You say about the media landscape, all the rest of it is going to be really difficult for a lot of independent websites. Not so much for me, because I have paying subscribers. I thank everyone. Also, thank everyone on Patreon for making this podcast possible, because without them, they are absolutely what keep us going, and it's going to be crucial going forward for the survival of all MotoGP media. So patreon.com/Paddock Pass podcast for all of your insights. But also, Liberty Media, this is going to be the first year they're in charge, the first year that they really start to shape the championship. And they won't shape the racing. What they will shape is the media exposure, the branding, the way that it gets sold, the way that it gets exposed, the way that the places that we go. Maybe we hear that we're going to China. Maybe we hear that we're going to other countries. That, to me, is going to be really, really interesting to see what the future of MotoGP is going to be, because I think we're going to get to see the first glimpses of it this year.
Neil, aside from avoiding double bookings, what are you kind of anticipating most this year?
Hopefully I can take my train to Jerez on time this year. And hopefully I don't book my trip to Malaysia twice like I did last year. I mean, fairly simple things in that I'm hoping for generally closer racing in 2026 than we had in 2025. Better sprints. I think we had 3 exciting sprints last year, but more often than not, they were fairly forgettable affairs. And they were kind of decided after 4 or 5 laps, which wasn't the most absorbing spectacle. I'm personally hoping for Ducati development to continue stalling like it did in 2025, just because that will inevitably bring the field closer together, which should help the kind of the racing spectacle. I'm hoping the Top Rack proves me completely wrong and doesn't have kind of a succession of teething issues when he adapts to MotoGP and is able to get up there and be pretty competitive in a short space of time. And then, yeah, what Dave said, I mean, we really do hope that KTM can build a competitive race winning package, and Yamaha's V4 adaptation is not as kind of strained as it was in the couple of wildcard appearances we saw from Augusto Fernandez in 2025, because we want to see Fabio and we want to see Pedro, I think, up there fighting with the Ducati and the Aprilias.
The voice of rational reason, just bringing the podcast to an end. Fair play. Well done for the plug as well on Patreon, Dave. If everybody wants to hear some more information, some bench racing, we're going to be getting some special shows just for subscribers. So head to patreon.com/Paddock Pass podcast.
There's a lot of really good. Yeah, there's a lot of really good content on there already. You two did a really fascinating pod about what it's like to work in the media. Gordo and Steve have done some really good pods about which tracks, who is the World Superbike GOAT, which is a lot of fun. So yeah, sign up and get listening.
And last but not least, MotoGP is only a matter of days and hours away. Let's not forget the first season launches are coming up. It's a bit of a bevy of activity because I believe there are 6 team launches in maybe 7 or 8 days. The first one beginning with Prima Pramac Racing. So we'll be getting to see those first new colours. No Repsol Honda again, Dave. Goodness, it just doesn't seem like the start of MotoGP without seeing that familiar blur of orange and blue.
You're still angry about not getting a cup of coffee there, aren't you?
Oh, the wankers. I mean, honestly, you travel all the way to Madrid and they can't give you a cup of coffee and make you work on the floor. Good riddance. Actually, it's not riddance, are they? Repsol are back now as some sort
they
of
are back,
supplier.
That's my favorite part of your book, by the way. When you let rip on Repsol.
Okay, that doesn't really say much for the rest of the book, but yeah, thanks, Neil. But yes, we're going to be on the ground for a couple of these launches, aren't we?
Yes, certainly. I think we're all going to Aprilia,
which is this week.
Which is this week. There's a chance that at least one of us will be at Ducati, although Ducati seem to have ramped back the invitations, so there's a lot less media there. And then a lot of them are online as well. So let's see.
KTM and Honda, I believe, are online. I think it also says something for the sort of geographical center of MotoGP that most of the presentations are happening in Italy. That's kind of a bit disappointing, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, it's either Italy or it's the Far East. So Yamaha are in Jakarta again, which tells you how important that is. There are who do we have in Malaysia? We have Gresini going in Malaysia. We have obviously the MotoGP season launch in Malaysia. So yes, yeah, I think there's also a bit of a shift eastwards as well. But it's either Italy in terms of probably costs, because also a lot of the teams are based there, and otherwise it's online.
Neil, are any Moto2 or Moto3 tests on your horizon?
There is an official test at Jerez normally a couple of weeks before the season starts, but as you know this all too well, as a freelancer, sometimes confirmation for the year ahead can take some time to take a little bit of shape. So still completely waiting to understand exactly how my 2026 will look. But yeah, we'll hopefully be done in Jerez. A few weeks before the season starts for that. I think it's the official IRTA test. So yeah, it's always good to go down and reacquaint yourself with things with two wheels after so much time away. But yeah, that should be fun. And it still might be going to the Sepang test as well to keep Dave company at the start of February.
Exciting.
As Dave mentioned earlier, the Paddock Pass podcast survives largely thanks to our supporters. So thank you very much for that. Also, if you want to get on board in terms of a B2B aspect, we can sort of promote your brand. We can give some exposure to a very sort of dedicated audience. So get in touch if you're interested. Aside from that, this is the beginning. As we mentioned at the top of the show, the podcasts are going to be flowing. We will be recording our next one from Milan, Italy, when we're all together for the Aprilia 2026 team presentation. And there will be more coming up. Thanks for listening to our ramblings and our predictions for this year. We'll be back for more very soon.